Chapter 219 to 222 days passed since the battle between water and lightning, as the people started calling the clash between Ringo and Yagoro. Honestly, it was quickly becoming the stuff of legends on par with Madara and Hashirama. For the first time in history, normal people from all over the elemental nations got to witness a battle between high-ranking ninjas from the comfort of their houses. The various ninja villages were of two minds on the matter. On one hand, people were shown the power of ninjas by someone who was a monster, even by their most brutal standards. That could really lead to some unnaturally high expectations from their clients, and it would be awfully awkward resolving any misunderstanding if somebody asks them to destroy this or that country. On the other hand, ninjas would be now feared or respected even more, which was, yet again, a double-edged blade in itself. Nevertheless, it was more of a useful kind in regards to ninjas. But one thing was set in stone. After seeing the battle, there wasn't anyone, be it a daimyo or a kage, who was willing to antagonize Kirigakyo. In fact, the village was flooded with requests for alliances, trading agreements, and so on. Naturally, all were offered under the assumption that Ringo will be the fifth Mizo. The door to Kirigakyo's council room suddenly flew open, shutting up a nasty argument between the councillors of Yagura's reign and the clan heads, who deemed it their right to become new councillors. All of them snapped towards the door, wondering who is the rude bastard trying to enter the room when they are discussing important matters. But before anyone could even let out a simple EP, Ringo apathetically strode into the room. One look at her eyes and the councillors, no matter whether new or old ones, knew they would be unable to provoke the unimaginably dangerous woman. Most of them averted their eyes, trying to rein in their shudder. But there were still some of them who couldn't help but hyperventilate when they remembered the battle between Ringo and Yagura. The old councillors simply feared for their lives, but they didn't have anywhere to go. All of them were Kiri loyalists to the core, and as such, if the new Mezukage wanted them dead, they would prefer dying in their village rather than going rogue. As for the new councillors, the clan heads, when they hired Yozora to resolve their problems, they never thought Ringo would be so frighteningly powerful. At best, they thought Yagura would be overpowered by sheer numbers or through trickery. But never, in their wildest dreams, did they think Ringo capable of facing a Bijou Hedon. Now they were stuck with her as their Mizukage, and slowly, they started to understand why Ao was so cross with them for giving her the position. Who cared if they, according to some document, had a free rein? Ringo raising one eyebrow had more weight than anything they could do or say. It was honestly a very striking reminder that might makes right. One they did not really enjoy. Ringo steadily walked towards the furthest throne-like chair in the back of the council chamber and flopped into it with a complete disregard for anything even remotely resembling etiquette. She sighed irritably and swept the people in the room with a fed-up stare. An hour ago, Ao sent me a message that you were bickering like a bunch of little children, and damn Ray for giving him a way to contact me. She mentally grumbled as the message interrupted her forging. Care to share what is so important I had to be dragged into it? The room descended into complete silence. Ringo stared at the councillors, her eyes getting more and more fed up by the second while the councillors tried to gather courage and their wits to reply. Well, Ringo drawled, her eyes stopping on Ao, who stood by the door to the chamber, showing he was not a part of the council. Of course, it has to be me. It's so hard to be one of the only two competent people in the room. Ao wistfully thought before sighing in exasperation. The clan heads and the old councillors can't decide who shall be the new council under yourself, Lady Emma Yuri. Maybe you could state your ruling on the matter. he added a bit mockingly. And with that sentence, tension returned to the room. The old counselors looked at Ringo with apprehension, while the new ones with hope, causing Ringo to deadpan at AO, her eyes clearly asking if this is really how leaders and high officials should behave. Much to her chagrin, he simply casually shrugged, letting her deal with the problem. Rubbing the bridge of her nose, Ringo furrowed her brows. "I am far too young to do this shit," she mumbled, and while at the time it peeved her to no end, now she inwardly thanked Ray for giving her an idea of how to avoid running things. If only he didn't decide to do it in the middle of their lovemaking. Then again, she probably wouldn't remember it if he didn't choose that exact moment. Fine. Ringo reluctantly started, as per Yosura's contract with the resistance. The clan heads will gain the position of counselors. Quiet cheers and smug looks started appearing on the faces of the clan heads before Ringo added, "Do keep in mind, the contract clearly stated you are obliged to work for the betterment of the village as a whole, rather than just your clans. If you break that, I will know." And she really would, since Ray used his mastery of seals when creating the said contract, "And I will break you." Now that put an instant stop to the cheers and smugness of the clan heads, and the mood turned somber again. Quite a few of them quickly decided it would be in their best interest to stop scheming too, as they were reminded that this was still a dictatorship. As for the old counselors, Ringo glanced at them, causing them to flinch. This was it. The fifth Mizukage was about to decide their fate. They will be put under investigation. If they come up clean and capable, they shall retain their position as a counselor. Ringo shrugged. Doesn't really matter if there are more seats on the council or not anyway. This way we will have more input, more people working towards the development of the village, and it will also be harder to manipulate votes. Not that I am going to let any who try walk away intact. She nonchalantly added. The old councillors sagged in relief, while the new ones were a bit miffed at people without the status of a clan head becoming councillors, or their sudden inability to bribe or blackmail others to get laws passed. Nevertheless, they could do nothing about it. Well, technically, they had all the right, but not one of them had the courage to speak up. Ao, on the other hand, started to get a bad premonition when Ringo smirked at him. As for the person responsible for the investigation, Ringo's eyes met Ao's pleading gaze, giving him only a cold look. I think Ao is the least corruptible person in this room. He should do it. Any objections? I object. Ao weakly tried, getting weird looks of respect from the people in the room, except for Ringo, who simply lifted her eyebrow amusedly. Rejected. She happily said, I look forward to your report. Ao groaned but nodded in understanding. After all, she was now his Mizukage, and he would be damned before he failed her. And with that, I believe my work here is done. Ringo hummed as she stood up and walked towards the door. Don't argue too much, kids. I don't enjoy having to come and teach you to behave because your MOAHMAO gets too annoying. You wanted to rule the village, so rule it, she said as she stopped in the middle of the door leading outside the council chambers. The air suddenly turned heavy as killing intent flooded the room, making the occupants sweat properly. Don't let me discover you are ruling it dishonestly. I want to see a clear improvement in the future. And with that, she walked away, the killing intent in the air dissipating. It was then the various clan heads paled as they understood that they might have screwed up with the contract more than they dared to admit. After all, she just dumped all the work on us, didn't she? Many of them realized. Worse yet, what's the point of being in politics if we can't even use it to better our clans? Alas, they were already far behind the point of no return. Ah, finally, peace and quiet, Ray exclaimed while enjoying the water in his indoor pool in the mansion in his dimension. He really couldn't stop praising himself for installing one of the spring generators in his dimension, enabling him to change the weather at will. Thanks to that, he could have anything from white-covered snowy fields to tropical heats. It's not as if you did anything substantial. As far as I know, it was Ringo who did the heavy lifting. Pakora, who sat in his lap, leaning her back on his chest, suddenly spoke. Oi, now that's just unfair. Ray dismissively drawled, not bothering to put any strength behind his words. I negotiated and set up the entire thing. That counts, ya know. I guess I can give you some brownie points for kidnapping the fourth Mizukage. Pakora noncommittally hummed, snuggling more into Ray. But, indeed, finally peace and quiet. She sighed in content. I was really happy when you gave me the responsibility to oversee our hidden village while you were away. Pakora continued, her eyes half-lidded. You didn't choose Conan. No, you gave this responsibility to me. It really made my heart flutter. Pakora grimaced. At least, it did before I realized just how much workload overseeing a village in the height of its development boom without shadow clones means. God, it was hell on earth. Pakora shuddered, causing Ray to snicker at her. That said, Ray started while gently stroking her hair. You developed the village, on the other side, incredibly well in the past few months. Setting up small spring generators in the training grounds so the ninjas can set their own training environment. Hashing out the finishing touches upon the organization of our ninja ranks. Creating fake misleading alliance documents with the Azucio in case some busybody decided to check what exactly is going on between them and us. And my personal favorite, your initiative to set up secret forward bases in countries that don't have ninja villages. You saved me a lot of time, Ray said, and affectionately kissed the side of her neck in a show of appreciation. Yeah, Pakora agreed. I couldn't really leave that project idle. Honestly, that idea of yours to set up booths where locals can issue missions and our troops can respond via teleportation seals. It was golden. It just needed some very precise but strict woman touch to improve all the imperfection. By my estimations, the project should be finished in a few months at the latest, and we will have a forward base with teleportation anchoring seals in most countries. I see, but woman touch, eh? Ray amusedly stated, making Pakora giggle as she lifted herself from his lap and turned around, straddling him while leaning into his chest and letting him feel her soft breasts. Yes, I would be delighted to show you what I mean. Pakora replied before her lips softly landed on Ray's, giving him no time to gather his wits as her tongue started asking for entry. He did the only thing possible in that situation, and his hands quickly found their way to her bottom, from time to time eliciting soft moans from the woman. Pakora and Ray made out for a few minutes, enjoying the presence of the other before they finally separated and Pakora laid her head onto Ray's shoulder, contently sighing. Ray simply let Pakora take the lead, knowing she was not one for being overly passionate or hasty. They had the entire day off, so there was no need to rush anywhere. How is our new resident Jinchuriki settling in? Ray asked, starting to caress Pakora's back, while from time to time stimulating her nerves by sending a flicker of his chakra into it through his fingertips. Squirming, Pakora whiningly breathed out before answering, "He is Godi," biting her lower lip. Pakora's hands quickly found themselves around Ray's neck, as she started using her wind chakra to produce an effect of a soft, exciting caress all over Ray's body that was above the water surface. Feeling it, Rei smirked before leaning closer towards Pakura's head on his shoulder and kissed her hair before quietly but smugly chortling into her ear, letting her know he acknowledged her attempt, but it was still nothing extraordinary. Pakura hummed, trying to sound irritated, but through the electricizing flickers of Rei's chakra through her back, she really didn't manage it. Then again, she had to admit her control of wind chakra was not yet good enough. It certainly didn't compare to what Conan could do with hers, so Pakura gave up in trying to compare herself with Conan and focused on making her touch as enjoyable for Rei as she possibly could. Plus, Rei had an unfair advantage, since he could use his lightning chakra even underwater without problems while controlling her. Wind chakra was a bit tricky underwater. Yup, there was no need to compete, she grudgingly told herself. Pouting, Pakura continued speaking about their latest freeloader. Yagura, for some reason, made quick friends with Yoguto. I guess it is some kind of Jinchuriki compassion or whatever. She let out in one breath before a gasp tore out of her throat when Rei reached her weak spot on her back. Last I heard, Yoguto refused to help me with some easy and unimportant paperwork because she was helping him with SAM reforms. She shuddered. Rei simply smiled at the working ethics of his newest SAM worker. The guy was quite good too, happily doing his job for him and not even knowing it. Pakura pulled her body a bit away from Rei, looking him straight in the eyes with a small smile decorating her lips. Enough about work. There are more enjoyable pursuits we could do during our holiday, she purred, putting her forehead on Rei's. After all, we do have a few days of vacation in front of us. We wouldn't want to waste them now, would we? Rei embraced Pakura's body tighter to himself, indulgently smiling at her while his naughty hands reached towards. The door to the indoor pool suddenly burst open, and the disheveled Marquis, gasping for air, spotted Pakura straddling Rei as they sat in the pool, both giving her a bit bewildered but also irritated looks. Not knowing if she should blush due to the situation she found her sensei in, or go completely pale because of the looks her sensei is giving her, Maki decided to pretend she didn't see anything and straightened up. It's an emergency. Anko Mitarashi just reported Uchiha Itachi and Root starting to act strange. The Uchiha massacre is coming. Rei and Pakura stared at Maki, both capable of thinking of only one thing. For fuck's sake, the Kirigokyo War just ended and now another bothersome situation sprang up. Their vacation was apparently cut short,